Hey everyone, welcome to my video on equilibrium changes. This is part 2, the part where we move a demand curve and a supply curve simultaneously. Now I'm not going to try to make any cutesy examples, I'm just going to walk you through some mechanics, so it should be pretty brief. Now from part 1 you learned that if demand increases, the equilibrium price rises, and so does the equilibrium quantity. If demand decreases, that's backwards, and the price and quantity in equilibrium fall. If supply increases, the price falls, but the quantity rises. And if supply decreases, the price increases and the quantity falls. Now, one thing I want to do is first I want to highlight why this can be challenging if we make two of these things change at once. So let's take an example where the demand decreases and the supply increases, those two middle cases. So let's start with market in equilibrium, and then we will decrease demand to some lower level D2, and we will increase supply to some higher level S2, and what you get is this new equilibrium that has the same Q, but a lower price. Now, if that were all we had to do, that'd be great. But here's the challenge. It is that it's not that simple. You see, I could draw it differently. I could draw it with a huge demand shift and a small supply shift, in which case the equilibrium quantity, in which case the equilibrium quantity falls from the 2 points. Or I could draw it with a tiny demand shift and a large supply change, in which case the equilibrium quantity between these 2 points rises. And so it depends. Do these effects balance out? Or does the demand effect outweigh the supply effect? Or does the supply effect outweigh the demand effect? And honestly, without more information, we just don't know. And that brings us to the point of this video. So let's organize our 4 possible changes, and we will use them to create 4 possible pairings of double changes in our market. We're going to have a demand increase, we're going to have a demand decrease, we're going to have a supply increase, or we're going to have a supply decrease. And so I'm going to just walk you through each pairing, and we'll figure out what we know and what we don't know. If demand and supply both increase, so we're in this situation and this situation. Well, from the supply, if we look at price, demand is pushing price up, supply is pushing price down. And so we actually don't know what happens to price. Unless we know that the demand effect is bigger than the supply effect or vice versa, we don't know. And it will depend which one is bigger. So I'm not going to put an arrow here, I'm just going to put a little blank because I don't know. Now if I look at the demand increase for quantity, the supply increase for quantity, those both have quantity moving in the same direction. And so I will confidently predict that the quantity will rise. Now what about the situation with the demand decrease up here and a supply increase? Well, if demand decreases, that pushes price down. If supply increases, that pushes price down. So I can confidently predict that price will fall. What about quantity? If demand decreases, quantity rises. If supply increases, quantity, sorry, I said that wrong. Demand decrease, quantity falls. Supply increase, quantity rises. They're working against each other. Without more information about which effect is bigger, the supply effect or the demand effect, I don't actually know what happens to quantity. What about if the demand rises and the supply falls? Well, if the demand rises, price goes up. If supply falls, price goes up. So I can confidently predict that the price will rise. But if demand rises, quantity rises. And if supply falls, quantity falls. Since those are working against each other, you guessed it, I can't actually predict what's going to happen without more information. And the last one, both of them falling, demand fall, price falls, supply falls, price rises. We don't know what happens with price without more information. And they both have falling quantities, which means that the quantity will fall. That's pretty much all there is to this. We need to keep track of which effect is happening. And if you're asked a question that gives you a concrete, the demand shift is bigger than the supply shift, well, then you can say that it overwhelms the other one. Like the drawings we had at the beginning. But if it doesn't give you any, if you don't have any extra information, then you can actually only predict one of these variables, and the other one's left ambiguous or uncertain. Now, if you were to look at a situation where I said that there was a demand increase and a supply increase, and the supply effect was bigger, well, from both of them, we know that quantity rises. And then if the supply effect is bigger, that means that this price cut wins out over this price increase. And so you would lean with it as if it was just a supply increase. I don't know if that's helpful or not. Either way, that's all I got. Thanks for watching, guys. Happy econing. And good luck.